Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to Stonehall Sports with me, LP Cruz, here on the Freshman 15 College Football Podcast. So last week we had a lot of upsets, a lot of drama in the NCAA. Some Titans fell, some people rose up, but it's a lot that we're gonna go over in about 15 minutes here on the Freshman 15 Podcast. And I'm always joined alongside my co-host, Mr. Tyler Moore. Tyler, what's up, man?
Not too much. I got ESPNU on. I'm watching that Bowling Green Toledo game.
See,
34-21.
man,
34-21 right now. Yeah, Maxon, baby. Ohio State. Not Ohio State. Jeez. Ohio's playing Ball State right now, too. So if you guys, it's Tuesday night. If you guys are missing out on Maxon, you're really missing out on some quality offensive line play sometimes.
Man, you in that match and stuff. That's like watching bare knuckle boxing. I don't know if are you from that era of like the Kimbo Slice era?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, I remember it was the Street Fighter. Yeah.
that's what I consider like Ohio to be. Like Ohio is that Ohio Bowling Green. If you're watching that, you're watching those Kimbo Slice fights. You are a fighting purist. Like you are a football purist, man.
Yeah, not too much on right now. So
Philly. I mean, there's basketball, but might be a me thing.
yeah, you know how I feel about basketball. So let's keep it at that.
You guys tripping, man. But all right. Well, look. So while we're here, the NCAA football. So last week, we had our Saturday spotlight, and I kind of started us off. So the game that I took into effect, or the game that I took to watch in the Saturday spotlight, was Texas and TCU. So here's the thing, right? When I build that game up, and I said, "Hey, watch this game. It's a big time matchup," I thought we were getting some kind of offensive firepower. We're gonna get like a light show. I tune into that, and I don't know what that was, man. Like, and it was a bad game. I don't want to sell it short to be like a bad game because it really wasn't a bad game. It was still kind of an exciting game, but it was a lot of defensive stops, which I think you had said this before. You're like, well, look out for TCU. They're the best defense in the Big 12.
Yeah.
I started to beat my chest like, nah, man, prove it to me. Like, let me see how good you guys really are. Well, they did. Like, they locked down Bijan Robinson. Like,
Yeah.
you locked down the Bijan Robinson to 2.4 yards per carry. I mean, and I'm not going to like knock down Texas either because Texas defense played pretty well too. I mean, for the most part, right? Because you had them kind of holding Texas in check, to holding them to field goals. If there was a turning point in that game, it was the pick by Ewers, like right before the half. Like I feel like what was going on with him was he kind of felt it too. Like he's playing in front of the home crowd. He's kind of been back. He's not been playing his best. And I think that pick in the double coverage, like that was like, all right, man, this is my slump buster. I know you don't like basketball, but that's like the Steph Curry logo shot, the heat check.
Yeah.
And when it didn't work, it threw them off totally. So I think he got like frustrated. He was trying to break that spell. And plus, you think about that missed throw in the red zone too, where he had the guy wide open. And from that point on, I felt like Texas, they were just chasing points late in the game they were never going to catch. And of course, the highlight of the game was that big run by Kendre Miller, the big 75-yard run to kind of close it out. He got a little bit of a bounce back with the mistake, but I think between that play right there, or even the Quentin touchdown catch where they got lost in the sauce, that kind of was a knockout blow, and it just let Texas bleed the clock late by running the football. I think yeah, man. I mean, it was a game to watch, but not for the reasons that we had pinned down, at least the reasons I had pinned down of being your Saturday spotlight. So you took a much better game, in my opinion, a much more exciting game. You had Oregon and Washington. So tell me about that game.
Yeah, so we talked about being one of the big games for the Pac-12 with the championship game coming up in the playoffs, and we got as RG3 would say, that big Penix energy. The final score 37-34 Washington. Penix transferred from Indiana this year. He leads the nation in passing yards. He had 408 yards passing, and for him to bounce back, I don't know if you've seen the highlights of this. He bounces. He gets down to they're driving in the red zone, and he throws an absolute mistake interception, on the goal line, and then to bounce back on that next drive, to hit Taj Davis on that 62-yarder to tie it up at 34 piece with 3:04 left. Defense takes care of it after that. Well, and then they get that 37-34 victory. I mean, it's offensive shootout, just like we thought it was going to be. No overtimes. We predicted a couple overtimes, but it was that offensive shootout. And Bo Nix, he balled out too. I think the thing that really hurt them was Bo Nix's injury, because then when they tied it up, he had to go. He came out for a complete series, and then when he came back, he had that one series, and then that's when the defense stopped him, and then Washington went up for that field goal, and it's just you know,
Bad
Penix,
timing.
yeah, yeah,
Bad timing,
yeah,
man.
very end of that game, and Penix, they, like I said, he had that composure to pull himself through, and now they kind of set themselves up for a complete showdown in the Pac-12. But we'll talk about that a little bit later.
Yeah, man. And that's the thing. I caught the tail end of that game, and I was
Yeah,
just watching it, and they're trying. Like you saw Bo Nix just begging, like,
yep,
let me in, call the timeout, let me in. And I don't think it would have made much of a difference. I think you saw. I want to say it was either Worthington or Irving that fell over on that play when they went for it on
mm-hmm.
fourth down. But it just felt like, man, if you had one more play with Bo Nix. But and again, we're gonna talk about that game too, because that thing, I think, like you said, that's a really important game in the
Yeah,
NCAA. That's a big time game in the
yeah,
NCAA for sure. So yeah, I mean, I think it was a great game to watch. It's just Oregon kind of messing up in that game, and it's just kind of, man, it's stunning
yeah.
for me.
And I mean, and like I said, Knicks played really well, like 280 yards passing, another 60 on the ground, three total touchdowns, and they had two rushers go over 100 yards. So I mean, their offense wasn't like struggling or anything like that. It just came down who had the ball last, who was going to make that stop, like we always say, who's going to make that stop, and it ended up being Washington, and it was a thriller. So 37-34 Washington, and like I said, that sets up that Pac-12, like we've been talking about all season. It's going to be a wild one these last 2 weeks.
Yeah, man. So we go from an instant classic out there in Austin Stadium, right, to an instant classic, to an absolute dud of a game that we that we both called together. So I feel like we're both
Yeah.
equally as responsible for the
Mm-hmm.
betting line. So Vegas, you got us at that time. So we both picked Maryland to beat Penn State. So Maryland to go to Beaver Stadium and win that game, which they did not do, and it went terribly, terribly wrong. I'm gonna let you start,
Yeah.
but tell the people, where did we mess up in picking this game?
Well, I guess it really goes wrong in the trenches because Maryland got absolutely dominated. It was 27-0 at halftime. Penn State ran for 250 yards, and then they only gave up 134 yards. And Tagovailoa, he ever since his knee injury October 22nd, he's basically looked like a shell of himself. And then their wide receiver core, who we say is like they're one of the best in the Big Ten, and then they would be, but you also see like their coaching is a little bit uninspiring. Like their plays are always so predictable, and when you're playing against a James Franklin defense with that defensive line and that secondary led by Joey Porter Jr., if if you're not creative to get things open, you're going to struggle. And Penn State ended up having a total of 7 sacks and 9 tackles for loss, and that pretty much is the story of that game.
Yeah, man. And so when I went back, I watched it because, like you and I think we don't catch everything, but we go
Mm-hmm.
back, we look at it, with YouTube TV, with the YouTube, the long game highlights, the long form highlights. We go back and look at everything.
Yep.
And I went back and I saw it, and I kind of watch these things sometimes. Think I'm crazy or not? I watch them with the sound off, so I can just
Yeah.
kind of see, almost like that film sense of watching it with the sound off, that the raw football, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing that stood out to me watching that was the young legs of Penn State, like
Yeah.
those freshman running backs,
Nick
and
Singleton. Yeah.
Nick Singleton and Allen, like those two guys. And I'm not checking for them. I'm really not checking for them. I've been looking at more so Hamby, who's like the hometown guy out here. But Nick Singleton, man, he's something special. He pops them off with 11 yards of carry. He's running free through their second wave, their secondary. And also, like you said, the Penn State defense, like their defense, they're very fast off the edge. They're very physical in the secondary. Sometimes a bit too physical in the secondary, but they're very, very physical in the secondary.
Yeah.
And you already talked about it with Tagovailoa. They made him miserable. Like, peep the numbers. Let's just check the numbers out. Like you said, he was sacked 7 times, 3.4 yards per attempt,
Yeah.
7.6 QBR, 7.6 QBR, and 415 on third down.
Yeah. It almost makes you feel bad for him because it was that bad.
Almost. I mean, but it was a complete ass whooping by Penn State, totally. And for a team, and also shout to Maryland. Maryland actually is one of those teams that I do think that they're they're getting better. They're one of those teams that they're getting better in the Big 12. I'm sorry, Big 10.
Yeah.
Every single season, they're getting better and better. They're getting better players, better recruits. Coaching has to come along as well, but I think they're getting better. And I liken them to another team I'm going to talk about later tonight. But yeah, I mean, just a total beatdown, man. But that's all right.
And it kind of sucks for their fans because they had that inspiring loss, I would say, to Michigan, because they played up to Michigan and it was close.
Absolutely.
And then you get drubbed by Wisconsin, and then you get drubbed by Penn State too, and then you have Ohio State next week.
Oh, it's just like being back in the ACC.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, man. So this is the part of the show that I absolutely love, man. One of my favorite segments, probably the favorite segment, is who hurt or who helped themselves the most in college football. So after all that happened last week in college football, what team, program, coach, player, who exactly either hurt or helped themselves the most in college football? And I'm tempted to lead the way here because I think I know where you're going. So let me go ahead and just take the baton real quick and I'll give it back to you. But for me, it's got to be Oregon, right? Got to be Oregon. And the reason why I say Oregon is that Oregon had a lot of people convinced. I won't say fooled because that's not really fair, but they had many people convinced that they were different. They had changed, right? They had found a new feather, if you will. And they bought themselves a shot in the college football playoff. People were really feeling Oregon, thought they were different, and it was kind of setting up again for maybe a rematch for Georgia. And I think they said during the game, they hadn't lost, I think, in 20 games at Autzen Stadium. They've been winning there a lot as of late. So it seemed like kind of the universe kind of working back in their favor to get him back. And I'm pretty sure things fell the right way. They would have been number four, going against number 1, Georgia. And then you do this. You just fall to a team, Washington, who is explosive, but you had no type of answer at all for their offense. And like you said, Penix, he was on fire. A phenomenal throw that he had. My lefty brother in arms, if you will, just to bring his team back late and win that game. Still, it's got to be a disappointment for them to fall back in the polls. I think Oregon now is 12 in the polls. 12 in the polls halfway through November.
Yeah.
I think it's over, man. I think that the dream in Oregon is over.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. That loss that puts them out. Yep.
Yeah, man. So for that reason, I would say the Ducks, they hurt themselves the hardest this week. But to flip the question back to you, who would you say either hurt or helped their case the most last week?
Yeah, so I've avoided this team purposely because I didn't want to feel like I was home cooking this entire podcast with we've been doing this. Did you know I was going to go this way?
No.
Okay, so I'm going to say the Ohio State Buckeyes. So yes, they played against Indiana, but that's something that you don't control that. What you control in a game like that is your effort and execution, and that's exactly what they did. So Ryan Day, I'm about to give you some stats here. He identifies an issue, a weakness that's within this team, and he turns it into a strength. So their first 6 games of the season, they're averaging 225 yards a game, 6 yards a pop on the ground. And then the previous 3 games, we kind of say, okay, Ohio State can't run the ball. It's going to be a problem for when they're facing Michigan. So the previous 3 games, they're averaging 125 at 4.5 yards a pop. So how do they change this to what's going on here? So against this last game against Indiana, they ran for 340 yards on the ground, and 280 of them were between the tackles. So how does this go about? So they were predominantly running out of a wide stretch zone scheme. So they were getting their big guys. If you watch Ohio State, their guys are massive. Their smallest guys like 6'4", 300 pounds. Their one tackle, he didn't play last week. He's 6'8", 365 pounds. So they run that wide stretch zone scheme, and that's what they were predominantly running most of the season. So you're getting those big guys moving side to side. But Saturday, that flipped completely. So they started running downhill scheme. So you're getting those big guys running north and south. So as I said, you had 340 yards total. 280 of them were between the tackles, basically. And that was with Mayan Williams getting hurt. Henderson is out. Your third string running back, he got tweaked in practice during the week. So you're running with your 4th and 5th string running back, and you still got 340 yards rushing. And like I said, Henderson and Williams, they're getting healthy now, and you're coming into this game with Maryland this week where they just struggled to stop Nick Singleton. So you have basically another week if you want to go. If you don't want Henderson to play, you have another week to get your offensive line ready. To run this scheme, to basically a live practice to get ready for that game against Michigan. So
Basically.
if they figure out, obviously we know they can pass, and if they've figured out this run game, like I just explained, they're the best team in the nation.
And that's been the thing with them, is that they've been able to get it done without their weapons.
Yeah.
And they're still productive. The only time I saw them kind of stumble a little bit was with Penn State, but Penn State has that kind of cachet. They're a good defense, and you're still playing without your best guys. For them to be that effective with their reserves, with guys that you were counting on, because we have not talked about Jackson Smith and Jigba since what, week two?
He's been hurt. He's barely played this season. I think he's played like 50 total snaps. Yeah.
So we've not talked about him since maybe this first couple weeks at most. Travion Henderson has been out for a while. It's crazy to think how this team just continues to replenish talent. They find ways around it. And again, I know how you feel about the team that's currently number one.
Yeah.
But those two teams, I think, are the class of college football, without question, those two teams.
Yeah.
And Ohio State does it week in, week out. They're silent killers, man, because they do it so abruptly, but then they're silent killers, man. But I'm with you on that one. Definitely with you on that one. And we'll talk about it. So, to this point, right, moving on to this week, because it's a lot happening this week, too. A lot going on. So, we got our Saturday spotlight.
Yeah.
Now, putting us ahead to this week, I got a real special matchup, to me, at least. I had someone actually mention to me earlier, so I'm going to kind of bring this up. For me, I got it marked down, and I hope you don't have it marked down, but my Saturday spotlight this week has to be, and I'm repping, USC and UCLA. We talking the same game?
Nope.
Thank goodness, man. All right, cool. Thank goodness. So with these two teams, I know I've talked about them and sung their praises a lot here on the Freshman 15. And for USC, the Trojans, they were given an absolute gift last week with Oregon stumbling. Mm-hmm. So now, if you're USC, you're now kind of creeping back into the talk for the CFP. Mind you, they did lose some firepower. I think the transfer running back is out. Travis Dye, he's probably out for the year. It looks that way. But still, they've got a whole lot of smoke left for the Bruins. And you look at what they've got. You got Caleb Williams, who's been very high as of late. I mean, the guy's been smoking lately. Mm-hmm. 19 touchdowns, 1 pick in the last 5 games. And the receivers, you got Brendan Rice, and then more so than that, you got Jordan Addison, who is a real monster. I've talked about him a lot. He's a kid from out here in the area. He's a cool killer, man. He's so nice. And then you kind of look at that, and the only thing that I have with this USC team, and this is what makes it a spotlight game for them, it's their defense. The defense for them is kind of sus. And I've noticed that a lot with these close calls, these shootouts, and one of them got them tripped up in the shootout they had with Utah losing on the road there. I think that's the one thing that kind of makes this a game to watch. It's going to be a spotlight game, and it's because you look at UCLA, if they're healthy, assuming they're healthy, they got the running back. I love Zach Charbonnet. I think he's a big, strong runner, got some deceptive speed. DTR, I think, can kill you on defense if you give him the chance. He's got the arm, the mobility, the swagger. He can give USC a lot of problems. And then you have, if he's healthy also, the scat back, Keegan Jones, man, he can fly. Like, he's got the jets, he can fly. I think this game can be a shootout if USC decides to sleep on defense, and given the track record, it's very, very likely. So I'm seeing this game to be a showstopper, and it deserves to be in the Saturday spotlight. Now, if you can beat that, you let me know.
Yeah, you went into a little more explanation than me for this one, but okay. I got the other Pac-12 matchup, the 10:30 night special, Oregon versus Utah. So by the time this game already is going to be played, we're going to know the outcome of the USC game, and that one has big implications on this because these teams right here. So you have it's I think it goes USC, UCLA, Oregon, and then Utah. So they're all right there, and I think the Trojans are the only one with 1 loss. So I think they're the only ones trying to bid. The Trojans are the only ones bidding for that chance to get into the college football playoffs, which I don't think it's going to happen. But this game right here, it's it's two. It's they both have two losses, and but they both can still be bidders for that final spot in the Pac-12 championship, and that means a lot to anyone within that conference. So, and I think Utah, they actually hold like the tiebreaker. So if say UCLA beats USC, they hold the tiebreaker over USC, but then UCLA holds the tiebreaker over Utah because they beat them. So I think it'd be UCLA and Utah that actually play in in that Pac-12 championship game. But like I said, they're basically out of it, out of the championship race for the CFP, but they're right there for the Pac-12 championship. So that's what makes this fun because we're gonna know what's gonna go on by the game that you picked for the game that I'm about to watch.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Makes perfect sense. And that's the whole setup and that's the whole structure of these two lost teams. It's going to get real dicey very soon, very, very quick, man. So now here's something crazy, right? So I think you hit me on the DM earlier. You said, hey, these upset picks, it's hard as shit to find an upset pick this week.
Oh, yeah.
And I looked through it. I got one, and I think it's wild, it's crazy, but I'm gonna make everybody wait for it. So I'm gonna let you go ahead. You got the lead for this week. What is your upset special?
All right. So like you said, I'm looking down the schedule and I'm just like, man, I cannot find an upset pick. So I'm gonna have to shout out to our guy Ty, and I'm gonna tell him that the Jayhawks are gonna go over the Longhorns. The Longhorns, they don't have a shot at the Big 12 championship anymore. I don't think. I'm like 95% positive they don't.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like they kind of just want to just get out of the season healthy, get to the bowl game, and you're not even have your big time players playing the bowl game because that doesn't happen anymore. So I'm gonna mail in this upset special like they're about to mail in this season. So Jayhawks over Longhorns.
All right. So all right. So here's how it goes, right? Because I was going through absolute hell looking for an upset pick, and you ever heard that saying of just hiding in plain sight?
Mm-hmm.
Like the most obvious answer sometimes is the right answer, and this time around,
I think
the craziest answer seemed to be the most right answer. It's like going back to school where you're doing like those scantrons. Like your ass didn't study. Believe me, like your ass didn't study. You had no idea what the hell's going on in the quiz, but the answer is like right in front of you, and it's so crazy not to make sense. And so for that reason, like that's my upset pick this week. So my upset pick this week, and you're gonna laugh, probably gonna get canceled on YouTube, but my upset pick is Illinois over Michigan.
Ooh, so you're
and
play big.
Just hear me out here, right? Just hear me out. So Michigan has a lot on their plate this week, a whole lot. So you have Ohio State around the corner.
Yeah.
And it's not just the whole thing of like we're looking ahead, because I've used that line a lot so far on the show, but I really mean that because they have this game stacked up. You then have a bunch of recruits in town for this. So you have a lot of eyes in different directions. You're trying to impress these people. And wouldn't it be some crazy shit, right? If this team decided to put all their eggs in this basket and they dropped those eggs like right there in Ann Arbor. It just feels so crazy. And I'm not saying that it's like 2001 losing to Michigan State, which is almost 21 years to the day. Like if you check the calendar, it's that close, that 2001 game. But it just feels like for me, and you would know a lot better as an Ohio State fan, that a Michigan mess up is right around the corner. It just feels like it. It just feels like there's something going on. Things are going way too well for them, and something in the air, something just feels off. Not sure, but something feels a bit crazy. Plus, it's Illinois, and you know that I like Chase Brown a whole lot. Like I really do like Chase Brown a whole lot. The guy's a tank, and you know how Brett Bielema works. It's just run it. Feed the guy. And for all people talk about Blake Corum, who's a great running back in his own right, let's remember, Brown leads the NCAA in rushing yards. So I just feel like for them, if you decide to get into a fist fight with this team, you run the ball effectively and efficiently, and your quarterback, Tommy DeVito, all you got to do is drive the bus and not crash it into the quarry. All you got to do. You might have a shot. It actually might play out. Like they might actually do this thing. So I feel like it's very likely that these guys can pull this game off. It's a crazy tall order. I know it's crazy, but you know what? Fuck it. I'm going with the Illini to take down the Wolverines.
Hey man, I would say that I would normally say I don't hate it, but I don't know. I kind of because the new rankings just came out. Everything stays status quo. Georgia 1, Ohio State 2, Michigan 3, TCU 4. So I would like a 2-3, and and just in case somehow Michigan beats Ohio State next week, I'd be like, well, it was number 2, number 3 that just flop out, switch around. But that's I don't know, but yeah, I mean it's very possible because we're talking about Jim Harbaugh here, and he makes some boneheaded decisions sometimes. If that game gets close, yeah, he look for a boneheaded decision by him.
Dude, I feel like the khakis are going to get tight at the worst possible time, man. It's again, it feels like things are going way too well for them right now.
And they're playing in Ann Arbor, right? They are in Ann Arbor. Saturday's supposed to be like 14 degrees here in Ohio, and they're farther north than me, so it's going to be real football weather. Yep.
Like 10.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and that's what I'm saying. I just feel like for Illinois, if they go into that game and they expect to just drag this thing out, really rough it up, like really rough that game up to where you're really dragging your, like playing drag ass in the cold, it's not that crazy to me.
Mm-hmm.
A turnover here, a fumble here, a bad call, like it's not that out of the realm of possibility. I know how you feel because you want to look good in case you lose. I got you.
Yeah.
Not so confident now, are you? But I'm just saying, man, I wouldn't put it past something like that crazy to happen. We've seen all these teams fall. We've seen all these Titans fall this season in the worst possible way. Alabama's fallen off. You've seen it like Ole Miss was rocking and rolling. They fell off. A&M fell off to, I forget who it was. But that's my point. It's been the year of, man, it's been the year of the fuck up. Like that's what we've seen all season long. So if that's the case, I don't think this one is that crazy. But hey, that's what you guys hear. That's why you guys are watching the channel. So hit that like, hit that sub button. Other than that, man, any last thoughts?
No, I mean, next week I'm not sure what day, so we'll look for a post on Friday from our boy LP here, when we're gonna do that live show. But we'll be sure to hit you guys up, and then that'd be a fun one.
You guys already know what this is, man. If you guys have not already done this, hit that like, hit that sub button, turn your noties on. You never want to miss an episode when it drops. Here at the Freshman 15. So for my co-host Tyler Moore, I'm LP Cruz. Thanks for watching, and as always, peace.
Peace.